So I'm here today with Tom Evans, author, wizard of light bulb moments, and trainer extraordinaire. Tom has recently written a book, Flavours of Thought, Recipes for Fresh Thinking. And we're certainly in times when fresh thinking about just about everything is really necessary and desirable to help us to move ourselves out of the mess that we've created. And Tom, I'm really curious to know what prompted the book Flavours of Thought.
Well, it came from a light bulb moment when I was ironically writing the book about light bulb moments. And as you know, I'm a mind mapper and I train on mind maps. And mind maps are brilliant for getting the left and right brain working together. And actually, I think when the left and right brain works together, you get 1 and 1 equaling 3, if not more. And I mapped out the words light, bulb, and moment, and then from each of those branches, then you put words that are that light makes you think of, that bulb makes you think of, that moments makes you think of. And as I was mapping out all the associations with the word light, I came up with the spectrum of light, and then I came up with the colours of light, and then I had this light bulb moment. Hang on, not all thoughts are the same. That we think they are in our head, that all this sort of jumble of thoughts, but they come in different colours. So imagine that we've got white light or white thought coming into our head, that they actually got different colours. And I thought, hang on a minute, colours. I know a little bit about quantum physics, and they talk about quarks having colours and flavours. And I love using metaphors, because metaphors really help explain complex things. And how we think is probably one of the most complex, ununderstood things on the planet, I would imagine. How can we be self-aware? And I have this idea that they come in different flavours, and by looking at the flavours and thinking about thinking, you might be able to think some new things. And that's where the book came from. And then the exploration then took me down the road of looking into some esoteric thinking.
Yes, because it's more well known nowadays that thoughts are things, that our thoughts, immediately we have them, begin to kind of concretise into something, so that if we're going to think, which we inevitably are, then surely we want to be having good thoughts rather than, and positive and powerful thoughts, rather than thoughts that disrupt us.
Yeah, you're right. People say thoughts become things, but I think they are things. They're actually as tangible as packets of energy, and what you think is what you get. And I'm sure everyone's got knows somebody in their life that's a bit of a worrier, and in fact I've got someone there in my life who worries if she's got nothing to worry about, and she spends all the time worrying as opposed to having other types of thoughts.
So how does this new book, Flavours of Thought, fit with your book Light Bulb Moments, which is due to be published sometime in the near future? Mm-hmm. How do they fit together? What's the way that they mesh?
Well, what I've done is I've categorised thoughts into 3 bands, 3 types of thought, each with 7 thoughts in them. And what kind of happens when you have a light bulb moment is you have them all at the same time. Right, and so remember Newton apparently had he got the theory of gravity just in less than a second. It took him the rest of his life to write it down. So what happens when you have a light bulb moment is everything goes off. If you were to MRI scan someone's brain when they have a light bulb moment, I'm sure every neuron would flash, and flash with light as well.
Yes, because
so
I guess a light bulb moment does feel as if everything's going off.
Yeah.
In your head at once.
Yeah, and then it takes you time to unravel it and then work out what you're going to do with it.
Yeah. And how can people best benefit from your book, Flavours of Thought?
Well, what I've done with it is I've come up with 21 flavours. There is a 22nd, which is really obvious. So once you apply the flavours, you go, that's what I was meant to do. So there's a sort of pseudo flavour, which are called the obvious. And what you do is you assemble them into recipes. So I put them into recipes of groups of 3 of the thoughts. And you can take any situation at all. I've given you some examples and some example occasions. And if you apply the thinking in sequence to those situations, it resolves itself. So those situations could be issues you've got or problems, or they could be situations, or they could be opportunities. And I've divided them into 3 groups of 7 of those categories as well. But there's nothing to stop you actually then coming up with your own recipes once you know the system.
So it is literally a bit like a cookery training in a way, that you can put your own dish together to suit.
Exactly, and in the same way you can get a ready meal, couldn't you, and shove it in the microwave and warm it up. Well, you're going to get one result from doing that, and that's the kind of mush that's in many people's heads. But what you can do instead is you can refine the flavours and balance them very subtly together to concoct a gastronomic delight.
So you can become the Michelin-starred chef, master chef.
Well, next week I'm starting master chef training, oddly enough.
How wonderful!
Yeah.
Yes, and we will give people details of how they can discover more about your master chef trainings, because I'm sure that's going to be extremely popular and desirable for people to participate.
And fun.
Well,
and
fun.
Very tasty.
Yeah, good. And what do you want readers to be thinking when they're reading your book, Flavours of Thought?
Now that's a really good question, because when you read it, what will happen, the way I've written the book, is it's written in such a way that you will stop thinking. And it's written using metaphor and hypnotic language patterns. And what happens is that switches your conscious mind off, so you get the learnings from the book. And you know when you watch a film and you get completely absorbed in it, and then time seems to stop. So what I want them to think is nothing, and just absorb.
As you say, you've written the book using metaphor and hypnotic language, and that will by itself take people to this place of non-thinking, so that they absorb your words. And will they find it easy to put into action when they've finished?
Yeah, I've got several people that are using the book every day. Each flavour has got some, I call them flauts. So I've summarised each flavour into some nice aphorisms. And if you just take one of those a day like a little pill before the start of the day, and moderate your day based on that flaught, which is a contraction for flavour of thought, then things magical will happen during your day on that basis.
We found earlier that there was a bit of magic going on in terms of the fact that we were going to talk about 2 particular parts of your other book, Light Bulb Moments, and I looked at Flavours of Thought thinking that those were the parts that we were going to look at, and it was quite amazing because there were 2 parts, recipe number 8 and recipe number 19.
It was 9 and 18.
9 and 18,
yeah.
Yes, 9 and 18. And they both turned out to be connected with love. One is falling out of love, and the second one is falling into love. And it's quite fascinating that, yes, one would actually have to fall out of love with certain things and go through certain ideas in order to choose to fall back in love with the things that are really more important. So do you see a lot of synchronicities and coincidences happening with people as they're using the book?
Well, let me answer that question in 2 parts. First is that we probably all know people that have affairs, and what they're doing is falling in love with one person while they're falling out of love with someone else, and how messy is that, right? So I always say, if you are going to go off with a different partner, fall out of love first, wind one affair up first before you start the other one. So it kind of makes sense to do that. It's easier on all parties, right? The general relationship advice, I'm not a relationship counsellor, but it kind of stands in good stead. But going back to the magic side of it, it's actually based on, the whole book is based on magic, because all the flavours are actually an interpretation of the major arcana, and each of the flavours is a key from the major arcana. And one of the things about the major arcana, most people think of the tarot as some sort of divination tool, but actually it's got every single bit of esoteric wisdom built into it. But the problem is some of it isn't very accessible. So what I've done with Flavours of Thought is I've written a modern day interpretation of the tarot without using the word tarot once, bringing it up to a contemporary audience.
I think it's very powerful because it does, as you say, it brings it to a contemporary audience and it makes it very applicable to any situation, as you could quite easily take it into a place that has very scientific minds who might regard the tarot as a little bit out there and wacky, or into a business in order to help people develop a plan and develop the way their business is going to go.
Yeah, yeah, and a set of tarot cards in a boardroom might look a bit out of place. So just some sample flavours instead that don't mention these things are slightly more acceptable in that environment. And oddly enough, it's from my own study of the tarot, as from a scientific perspective, that I got into all this in the first place. So I started using it with people in creative situations, and I found out that certain cards switched people on in certain ways. And as a scientist, I thought, well, I've got to research this. So I started looking into the background of the tarot and read as much as I could on it. And I found out that that there is sort of deep magic embedded in each card. But when you combine them together into recipes and groups of cards, you get even more magic coming out of it. So it's no accident that you pulled out those two recipes before.
And what would you like to say about Flavours of Thought in order to explain to your audience and to potential students and clients the benefits that they can derive not only from the book but from the training that you've developed based on the book?
I just want people to think differently. If you go about your day thinking the same way, you're going to get the same results. And it's an exploration, it's some fun, and if you think differently about some of the same things but in a different way, you'll start then to get different results. You'll start to see the world in a different way, and the world will come back to you and give you lots of new opportunities that weren't there before.
And in summary, what message would you like to give?
Have fun.
Good. That's a message that I thoroughly endorse and have used for many, many years. So thank you, Tom. It's been really enlightening to talk to you today, and I wish you greatest of success with Flavours of Thought and look forward to hearing more of your thinking very soon.
Happy thoughts to you too.
Thank you.